Well, welcome everybody to a new episode of Port Perspectives, a program designed to assist young people coming up through the industry and what it really kind of takes to be successful and what's going on in our world. I'm Captain Jeff Monroe. I'm the Director of Education and Standards for the International Association of Maritime and Port Executives. And I'm very pleased this day to have Captain Allan Gray, who is the CEO and President of the Port of Halifax, Nova Scotia. And he doesn't speak with a Canadian accent. He's actually from Australia, all right, which is probably the reason they hired you. But anyway, it's great to have you with us today, Captain Gray. And would you take a few minutes and tell us a little bit about the path that you followed and your career and a little bit and how you got to where you are today?
Yeah, sure, man. Thanks for having me on the show. And yeah, look, really, I'm a master mariner like yourself, Jeff. I started out my career in the Australian National Line in Australia, which is no more. I mean, there's still ships running around with an A&L funnel on them, but they're owned by CMA CGM, the French now. So that's a bit of a shame, I suppose. But yeah, started out my career in Australia. One of those guys that kind of got bored with what was happening in Australia and around the coast of Australia, so I went offshore. And ultimately, my career led me to working for Norwegians, and I was running gas ships around the world. In fact, a lot of it between Africa and Brazil. So it was on global services, being picked up all over the place. When it was time to come ashore, effectively moved into the port areas, but doing vessel traffic management, and I managed the Great Barrier Reef vessel traffic system through there.
Wow.
And worked my way back through the dark side of shipping again, doing indigenous supply and projects, and ended up in the Port of Fremantle, where I thought I was going to be there for 3 years and ended up 13 years. Harbour Master and General Manager of Operations for the port. And then I got an invite to say, did I want to come to Halifax, 180 degrees around the world? And I often say to kids up here, if you put a pin through Halifax in the center of the globe, you come out about 200 kilometers south of where I lived in Australia. So it's pretty close to 180 degrees around the world. But there was an opportunity to come here, be the CEO of the port here. And the main reasons for that was because I had the ability to make a change here at a critical time in the port's journey.
There's certainly been a lot of interesting things going on up there in the port, and ports go through, ups and downs and stuff like that in regards to growth. But you've had some pretty good successes here in the last couple of years, particularly with the attraction of PSA into the port. You want to tell us a little bit about what's happening in the port right now?
Yeah, you're right. I mean, that's the thing in our industry is ups and downs are very common. There's a lot of people out there in the industry saying, disruption's the new norm. I don't think they're perhaps as old as us, Jeff, but I think I remember my earlier career at sea, and there was lots of disruption, just as much then as there is now. So I don't think it's out of the norm to have disruption in our industry. So yeah, we went through a little bit of disruption with COVID and the supply chain crisis. But investment with PSA, Port of Singapore Authority in our 2 terminals, significant. It's a significant sign of confidence when you see a global leading terminal operator like that invest in a port like Halifax. That's a sign that we're in the right space. We've done some good infrastructure investment, which has allowed us to continue to cater for ultra-class container ships. So we're the only Canadian port on the east coast of the North America that can handle the ultra-class container ships. We've invested in our rail with our rail operator at CN, and we continue to invest in more rail sidings. But they're the sort of things that allow us to keep looking at capacity and making sure we can cater. We put out a 50-year plan, which looked at our long-term capacity and our ability to deliver. But more importantly, and one of the things that really drew me here was the need to make sure the port refocused their attention on coordination of operations and its impact on community and its engagement with community. So we spent a lot of energy in re-establishing our connection with community, and that's extremely important for the ports. And in doing that, you know, pushing our sustainability path and our strategy, focusing on not only how can we deliver for the industry, but how can we deliver also for our community up here. Yeah, and that's been a very big focus for us.
It's often been a challenge considering where the location of the port is, you know, on the south side, and the community that kind of surrounds you there. You know, I know over the course of time, they've gone back and forth with CN trying to get the tracks removed and all the rest of it and stuff like that. So community relationships, I think, have been a very significant factor. And I was very pleased to see all of the progress. Of course, last year we went up and taught a course in Halifax. And your deputy vice president of business development is on our board of advisors, which we're very grateful for, and we appreciate the time that you allow him to have to do that. But it was good to see so much going on and to see all of the investment and all the plans and all the changes that were being made and everything to accommodate it. And of course, you're fundamentally a throughput terminal into places in the U.S. Midwest, and of course, you have, you know, some of the deepest harbor waterways, you know, on the east coast of North America. And that's put you in a very unique advantage of trying to capture the first inbound, last outbound, and stuff like that. And of course, when I was in Portland, we connected with you through Halifax, the same ship that called on Halifax called on Portland and Boston at the time. And it was a good partnership and everything. So it's always been great working with the port. And you do other things besides containers. I mean, you also have the automobile trade, and you have Richmond Terminal, and you have the passenger trade.
Yeah, I mean, passengers, the cruise trade has grown significantly. And, you know, everyone thought with COVID, you know, how was it going to bounce back? But it's surpassed pre-COVID numbers already. So it's a strong trade. We're a marquee port in Atlantic Canada. So vessels calling here need to call in Halifax before they go into Atlantic Canada. So 99, 95 to 99% of all calls in Atlantic Canada call in Halifax. So that puts us, you know, in the peak of our season, you know, September, October, you know, it's hell. So it's, you know, it's four or five ship days, and, you know, it's busy times for everyone. But we're doing about 200 ships this year, be 375,000 passengers. Again, it's an interesting thing, similar to our cargo. We have a unique position in it. We're not doing turnarounds. They're all transit passengers, so it's a different focus for us to other ports, but a significant economic driver and a significant part of our business. General cargo, like anything, has pretty well stabilized post-containerization. You know, it's finally sort of leveled out. You mentioned the challenges where the port is. So things like the opportunities around wind marshalling are limited for us because we just don't have the land availability in an inner city type port for us. So there's other ports around Nova Scotia that can do that, and we try not to step on their toes in successfully delivering that. We focus on the things that we're good at and are important to our communities.
And I think in the long run, you know, there's been certainly a significant interest with CN, with, you know, obviously Prince Rupert at the west end, you guys at the east end and everything. And of course, the shift in what's been happening with the Suez Canal, and then, you know, the low water in the Panama Canal. And of course, now, you know, the reshift to the Suez Canal, and now the issues with the Red Sea and all of that. So are you seeing, like most of the other ports in North America, seeing an increase in trade now that we're into the second quarter of 2024?
Not so much. We're still seeing impacts of the Red Sea.
Yeah.
And look, you know, it's a funny thing. If I take off the commercial hat for the moment and put on a Canadian hat, you know, and say, let's think about the good of the country of Canada. People talk about broken supply chains, but I look at Canada and actually say it's working quite well, because last year when there was trouble on the West Coast, we had like a 20% lift in our cargo. because we're all sending cargo into central Canada and the US Midwest. So when the West couldn't handle it, the East Coast, we were picking it up. This year with the Red Sea, we're seeing some cargo shift to the West Coast, but overall Canada's growth is going up about 8%. It's just that we're dropping a little bit and the West Coast is up. So if you look at it from a supply chain reliability point of view to our customers in central Canada and the US Midwest, they've got choices and they've got resilience in the system that if there's a problem in the Red Sea sewers, well, you can come from the Asian countries across and still get in the Midwest. When there's troubles on the Midwest, they can come via sewers and get to us. So yeah, we're still feeling the pinch. I think we're starting to level out. We're optimistic that we'll start to see some growth come back and see some of the cargo that shifted to the west ease back to this side. But until the Red Sea conflict really has settled itself, it's always going to leave a little bit of uncertainty in the trade. So.
Mhm. And you have a relationship with the Panama Canal, if I remember correctly,
Yep.
that was signed a couple of years ago as well.
Yep.
And of course, they're struggling with their operations down there
Yep.
because of the water levels.
Yeah, unfortunately, we, for Asia, we have two connections, which is Suez and Panama link. Both of those are challenged for us. Our European trade's fine. It's not hampered in any way. But yeah, certainly the Asia trade is a challenge with both those connections. But the other side of us for Canada is US is spending. Your inflation's still up and people are still spending in the US. Canada's inflation has come down. The Canadian bank, sort of screwed us down pretty hard on that, but it means people aren't spending. So we're not seeing quite the spend habit that's happening in the US at the moment. So our domestic demand's not quite as big. So we won't see the same bounce backs that the US ports are seeing, I think.
Well, we like to use our credit cards in the United States, and of course, we have the highest level of debt that we've had in a long time here in the country. So, well, and who knows what's going to happen after November?
Yep,
we're all guessing at all
very
of that.
True.
Yeah, and I think you bring up a good point. Our industry is very resilient. I remember when the whole issue first came up about the Red Sea, and of course, then the bridge issue in Baltimore. One of the things that I had stated in our stuff that we put out to our members and everything like that was that we're a resilient industry. If it stops coming here, it's going to wind up showing up there. It's going to cost more, no question. I see the container freight index top $5,000 so which has been creeping up and creeping up and creeping up, which make it more expensive to shippers. But it's also an indication that demand is up as well.
I also think that. Sorry, I was just going to say. I also think that one of the issues is there seems to have crept in an expectation that maybe because of the digital world, that means you can instantly fix things. And so when there's a disruption in the supply chain, people go, well, if we know it, we can redirect a container. You can't redirect a container on a ship in the middle of the ocean, and it's this concept that we can suddenly reroute supply chains in an instant. Is a bit of a misnomer. Yes, we can. And so you saw in the Red Sea that in time they reacted to what happened with Red Sea, put in extra ships, had a longer voyage, but sort of got the capacity back over time. We can see shifts from the East Coast to the West Coast when it's necessary, but it takes time to renegotiate slots and get that sorted. So I think we have too many government people running around saying that digitalization is going to allow us to instantly react and make modifications to supply chains. And I think we're going to be surprised that that's not the case. And the industry always has reacted to that, and it's just the way it is.
Being an old tanker stiff, I remember going up the coast and we get a change of order half a dozen times. Go to Boston, go to Portland, go to here, go to there, and only to find out it was all driven by the retail price of gasoline at the port during that. During that happened a week and stuff. Well, with all the changes and everything, how do you use strategic planning as a tool with you and your staff? And of course, having met a good portion of your staff, many of whom are new. It was quite impressive about they seem to have a single very strong focus
Yep.
and had a good sense of where they needed to go. And how do you apply that strategic planning process to your team?
Yeah, I mean, to me, you can get into the technicalities of strategic planning, but the strategic planning really is about trying to tell a story. Tell a story to your staff and to those outside your business as to where you're trying to get to the business and how do you foundationally change things to enable the business to deliver what it has to deliver over a period of time. So our 50-year plan, which I set out to do when I first got here, was really about, making people realize there was capacity in the port. There was a long-term future. And that was both for the staff internally and for external people to say that, there's a good 50 years plus here, people. Don't think we've done our dash. There's a lot here. Then it's getting back to saying, well, what foundational things do we need to do in the next 5 years to ensure that we can deliver on that 50-year plan, those promises? How do we make sure we can deliver those promises? So then it's getting staff down to looking at, well, okay, they're the foundational areas, thematic areas that we need to focus in. And then I take them back another step to say, well, okay, that's 5 years, but now next year, what are the projects? What are the specific projects we need to do next year that foundationally support where we want to go? So you're sort of stepping it back. So in the end, they don't have to focus on 5 years and they don't have to focus on 50 years. They know there's a direction there. They need to focus on next year, and that starts to become, more consumable for them. So they're focused on delivering those projects, and we've agreed that those projects are foundational or have a transformational impact on the business. And we put the narrative behind that to say, these are why we're doing these things. It's rebuilding relationships with our community. Why? Because we have a 50-year plan which requires community to give us the license to do that. Okay, we've got it now. We need to focus on that relationship because it's about our long-term longevity. So that's really how we focus. Obviously we have a very process-driven, to get there, but the key is it's the narrative behind it. Why are we doing this? Why is it important? What's in this for everyone? So.
And it's obviously been successful because, the Single Port Authority, PSA, is, fastest growing terminal operators in the world. And they looked at Halifax and found it to be very, very attractive. And came to you, not only to operate the former HAL term, but also now the former Cirrus terminal as well. Which means that their strategic plan about using Halifax as a key hub, I think, is going to be effective. And I think in the long run, the port has become attractive. And of course, when I saw it, you guys are already getting started on a lot of investment. New equipment, new cranes, new rail, the whole 9 yards, all of it coming in, and it can be challenging when you have ups and downs in the economy. But I don't think a lot of people recognize the importance of looking at the long-term view and then taking it in a series of short-term steps.
Yeah, and I think it's easy to get hung up on the growth path. Everyone, if you're a business with, 1,000 shareholders who are all screaming for improved dividends, I kind of understand it. But in our business of facilitating trade, it's about enabling the infrastructure, making sure we've got the right income to ensure we can invest in the income, in the infrastructure that we need. When you get hung up on next year's figures have to be bigger than this year's figures, and the year after that better be bigger than that, you lose sight of what you're there for, and you start becoming fixated on growth and investment in infrastructure for growth itself. And suddenly I think you can find yourself in a position where you're investing in infrastructure which is surplus, and the supply chain ends up having to pay for that surplus infrastructure. And they pull away and they look for somewhere else to go. Our philosophy has been optimize first. Let's bleed the assets. Make sure that our work with PSA and CN is about constantly looking at ways to optimize the capacity we have. And we used our living lab, the peer, as a means of using innovation and digitalization to help drive that optimization. Then it's the timely investment in infrastructure that goes with that. And having the 50-year plan means we're always focused on, when's the right time to make that investment? When is it going to deliver against the demand? And that doesn't mean we can't react to sudden growth tomorrow. It just means that we're being sensible about how we approach it. But I do find where people get really hung up on growth only as that's what my business is growth. Then you lose focus that you're facilitating trade for people.
Mm-hmm. As we're very much aware, and as you see within your own staff, we have a lot of young, new professionals who are coming into our industry. And we're very fortunate so many of them take advantage of our training programs to learn about the difference between the pointy end and the blunt end of a boat, as a young person coming in, what attributes do you think they should embrace in maybe someday sitting in the same chair that you're sitting in?
I found the one thing that served me the most through my whole career, whether it was at sea or in this industry on the shore side, is I've always been true to myself. Be authentic. I mean, and even like one of the big things when I've had to deal with community and deal with First Nations here is if you're always presenting yourself in every circumstance, people begin to trust you and you can start to have quite difficult conversations then. So whether I'm working with CN or PSA or whether I'm working with community or First Nations or with my own staff, people see the same me. They're not seeing a different me. And that's a really important skill attribute, I think. People tend to feel that they need to adjust the way they are for the different audience. I disagree. I think you have to be authentic to yourself, and use that authenticism and genuine approach to build trust, because there is nothing more powerful than trust with your partners in the community, and your staff. I mean, it's easy to lose trust. It takes a lot to build it. Very easy to lose it. So, I found as you go up, and a little bit of advice, and it's not so much an attribute, it's just a sanity check, is as you climb the ladder, you do more and more of the things you don't like doing and less of the things you really enjoy doing that are fun. So I've had a philosophy in my life. I always hold on to something that I really enjoy. And that empowers you to get up in the morning and come into work, because you've always got that one thing that energizes you in the day and keeps you focused. And then the little problems that hit you from side to side, they just bounce off and go on. So for me, innovation and technology is something I love to do. It invigorates me each day delivering something like that. So I stay close to that space, and that keeps me pretty excited. So the other is, it goes two directional, and that probably depends on the people that you're, for young and old. I find quite often when we bring young people into the industry, we assume that they know nothing, when quite often they're the freshest out of university and have actually more knowledge than most of us older guys. But they don't have as much experience, but they might have a lot more knowledge. So I try to say to people, always be prepared to listen to the younger person's knowledge, and to the young person, always be prepared to listen to the older person's experience. And if you can start to blend those two things together, then you start to become quite a powerful leader. Also from the fact that you listened, which is a powerful leadership skill. So
yeah, that's part of building the leadership team. I have a niece who was an aspiring eye doctor, and she had fresh out of college, and she picked up something in one of our nephews who was also a seafarer like us, a unique thing that she had just learned about in college, and says, well, I think you got this, So you're right. She brought a lot of fresh knowledge to the circumstance, right?
Yeah.
And but tempering it with experience is an important thing. But that's part of experience. I think is part of the great attribute of a good leader, to be able to bring a team together And one of the things I find that's always fascinating is that, of course, we've been in an industry that have often been saddled with people who come from other areas of the world, like politics and stuff like that, who
Yep.
find themselves in our positions, who really don't understand all of that. So it's so nice to see so many people coming up through the industry like yourself, who have had a lot of experience, a lot of hard knocks, and
Yep.
are able to adapt and work. Is working on a ship,
Yeah.
you know, you're a team whether you like it or not.
Yep. And no, I mean, and I think it's something that young seafarers need to see, because you'll appreciate it's becoming more and more challenging to get young people to go to sea to gain those core skills and attributes that we've got over time. But they need to look at where we are now and realize that going to sea doesn't mean you're stuck at sea forever. There is a pathway, and these are core skills, the ability to act in the team, the ability to make autonomous decisions. Then that's one of the strongest things for mariners, is the fact that they have the ability to make decisions on a gut instinct quite comfortably, and will live or die by the sword at the end of that as well. They're quite accountable for what they do. So people who want to go to sea shouldn't be afraid that by going to sea, that's them stifled for the rest of their life. And in fact, I see it as one of the really good building blocks for a good career in marine port executive environment. It's these are core skills, core understandings of the industry.
Yeah, I know we've all been through that. You have your plans, you sign aboard your first ship, you're excited about the adventure, and then life happens,
Yep.
right? And it's always interesting to see more and more people who are very skilled, who are coming into the industry and stuff like that from the ships. And it always wasn't that way, but it certainly has become much more common. And ex-mariners and a lot of our ex-military. I had the opportunity to train some of the Canadian military in logistics and stuff, and they're very sharp people and stuff.
Yep.
So it's been a great partnership between our two nations, and I'm very happy to hear that and stuff like that. So, and we're excited because we are going to be offering a management course in Australia sometime in 2025.
Oh,
So we
excellent.
may,
I'll be back then.
we'll make a point of connecting with you somewhere
Yeah.
down there and stuff
Yeah.
like that, and hooking up with you as well. But certainly, I know that your plans are changing, and but in the course of all of that, you've had a very, very positive impact. Certainly, from what I've heard from your staff, and certainly from the community and everything like that. So wherever life takes you on that course we set, or drifts off, whatever. We wish you all the very best of luck in all things, and maybe we'll run into you down there. We would look forward to that.
Yep. Yep. So I'll be back there by the end of the year. My contract finishes here in November, and so I'll be back down in Australia and settle my family back home, and then get on. I think my wife said it's time to have some fun, but I haven't worked out what her definition of fun is compared to mine yet, but we'll see. Yeah.
I'm sure she'd be interested in taking a cruise, and you'll be scratching and going like, "Yeah, I've been there, done that."
Yeah,
So,
that's it.
well, Captain, thank you so much for your time this
No,
afternoon. We
you're welcome.
really appreciate it, and it was wonderful talking to you. And I hope I get a chance up to see you up in Halifax before you leave. But certainly, I'll look forward to maybe seeing you down in Australia one of
Okay.
these days. But thank you very much for everything, and the best of luck to you and all of your future plans.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me.